Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the BuzzStream podcast. My name is Vince Nero, and today I'm joined by Cyrus Shepard. You've been in the SEO industry. You've run into Cyrus's stuff. He's worked at Moz for years and years. He was secretly a Google quality rater, and now he's the founder of Zyppy, an SEO agency, and he also runs Zyppy Lists, which is an awesome directory of marketing companies. You should definitely check it out. So thanks for joining us, Cyrus. How you doing?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me. Been a longtime fan of BuzzStream for years and years and years. So happy to be on the podcast. And I was telling you before we started here, man, you got one of the best backgrounds I've seen in the podcasting world. So that's actually inspirational. Love the neon.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it is a faux neon. So, it's just like tricks of the trade. You can get it on Amazon. It's like $60 or something. But Cyrus, today I really want to talk about links, ranking, all the SEO stuff that's kind of seemingly turned on its head in the past, even, weeks, I'd say. You've done some amazing tests at Zyppy. I brought this kind of stuff up on the podcast. I've implemented a lot of, things that you've seen with some of your own strategy or some of your own studies about HCU. It has really, impacted my strategy, but I'm getting the feeling lately that I can't trust any of the SEO best practices I've learned in the past, at least 5 years. So I'd really love to get your thoughts on, are the old tactics dead? Should I just be throwing them all out? Where should people's head be at these days?
That's a really interesting question. I think we're maybe celebrating the death of, a lot of these SEO tactics a little too early, but I think what we're seeing is Google just layering new signals on top of the old signals. So we still need links, we still need content, but now we also need additional things like we need brand, or, Google is looking at our business model. Are we just, affiliate sites and publications are having a much harder time. People say they want visitors to have a reason to visit your site. So we see Google, kind of devaluing content made for SEO. We used to have content made for AdSense. Now it's content made for SEO. Determining what that is, though, has become really difficult because, of course, we're making content for Google, but Google wants us to have a little bit more, and it just makes everything harder. So to go back to your question, I still think we need all those traditional SEO practices. We need to build links. We need anchor text, we need content, but we need to be conscious of why we're doing it and layer on a few extra layers on top of that to be successfle.
Yeah. I mean, you've said a couple of things in there about brand, about, the types of sites. Let me hit on one specific thing that I thought was really interesting, this idea of the death of affiliate sites. I mean, do those sites at this point to you have any value to Google? Can they still survive?
Yeah. Now let's just start with the hard truth. After the helpful content update and a bunch of updates after that, I would say 85% of affiliate sites have seen negative impacts over the last couple of years. A lot of them are just dead now at this point. 20% are survived, are doing okay. You can still do affiliate marketing. But the bar is so much higher now. It used to be you could just write a post, you could get the keywords, you could rank, all the traditional things, interlinked, the traditional SEO. The problem is we got way too good at it. SEOs got way too good at ranking stuff, and Google was getting complaints on Reddit that every post was just every search result was just a top 10 SEO spam list. So now the bar is so much higher. Now with affiliate marketing, you generally need, lots of testing, original research, price comparison tables. You have to do everything so much deeper and so much better than you used to have to do it, but you can still win. I mean, Run Repeat, a site I often use in my conference talk. They famously cut their shoes in half. They're killing it, because they're doing things that nobody else is doing. NapLab, mattress testing, their posts are so in depth, tearing the mattresses apart, testing every little thing, dropping bowling balls, taking videos. If you're willing to go to that depth, Google is still rewarding that type of affiliate marketing in the SERPs, but just writing a post, hiring the writers out and like, hey, we reviewed some stuff that we copied from 10 other sites. That stuff isn't working as well now. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you can extract that thought process and put it into everything you do in SEO and content these days. It's like, I used to talk about this at Siege with new hires. You know, we come up with ideas and it was like, wow, this is something I can pitch for links. And it's like, well, if you're not willing to go the extra mile and really write something or do something or study, gather research that other people don't have time to do, then you're not necessarily going to make a linkable, quote unquote, linkable asset. So I love that thought process. Okay. So another thing you mentioned was, branded, the power of brand mentions. Let's get into that a little bit. Do you think, like traditionally keyword rich anchor text, was kind of the key. And recently you published a study that kind of saw maybe Google was rewarding some sites that were kind of going back to basics in some of the ways that they were linking, and specifically a lot of like branded keywords and an exact match anchor text and that sort of thing. Can you elaborate on that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me tell you a story though, before I get into that. Just talking about this idea of brand and how it's, SEOs have been talking about brand for 15 years. Just build a brand, just build a brand. And it's kind of like someone on Facebook I saw said, telling a website to just build a brand is like telling a homeless person, just buy a house. Why don't you just buy a house and you'll solve the problem? Building a brand is hard. But, in the old model of SEO, if you've been doing this a long time, like let's say 10 years ago, you wanted to rank for credit card miles, right? So you might try to get a domain that's, creditcardrewards.com or something like that. And you go on, optimize all the keywords. And if you were good enough at it, you could make that work. But if you look at what's ranking now, the guy, instead of paying $1,000 for a keyword rich domain, the points guy is a great example. Everybody has heard of the points guy, and he paid $8 for that domain on GoDaddy, and he built a brand because people are looking for the points guy. They're actively seeking him out. So that's the difference of the type of SEO you need to do today versus 10 years ago. We need to build that brand. Now, back to your question about anchor text. One of the things I haven't published this data. I save it for private conversations like this. So we looked at HCU sites that were negatively affected by HCU and other Google updates. And we looked at the extremes, the top 1% of winners and the bottom 1% of losers. And we compared, the anchor text profile to those links. One difference that stood out huge was branded anchor text. The winning sites, the top 1% of winning sites, something like 20% of all their anchor text was branded. And losing sites, it was, 5 to 10%. I don't know the exact number, but that stood out like a sore thumb. The winning sites also had a small amount of, branded search. It wasn't necessarily a lot, but they were being mentioned in the link graph much more frequently than the losing sites. So that's a shift we've done within our strategy with working with clients here, trying to shift those anchor text links to, branded, talking about the companies. So great question.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Like, you want to get your brand mentioned, you should you want to get your brand noticed, you should mention your brand. But there's just like some type of disconnect that happens. And maybe it's at the agency level, like this need to scale everything. And, as marketers, we tend to ruin everything and overanalyze everything. And but when you get back to it, I mean, the idea of just build a brand, I think can probably be distilled down to like, just get people to mention your brand, or at least start with that. Right. Go ahead. Good.
Yeah. That is a perfect way to start. And for us, when we're building links, we've shifted from the old model was you have a page, you have specific keywords you want to rank for, you do some digital DR, build a campaign around that. Now we're still doing some of that, but we're shifting to more brand building, where we're talking about, I tell the company owners I work with, listen, we don't want to build links specifically to this tool. I want some links about you. I want some links about the CEO, the company. I want you to tell your story about what you're doing and get some coverage about that. Because look, those types of links, those types of genuine stories help build the brand. And even if there's not a ton of people clicking or searching, Google still sees all that on the link graph, in their knowledge graph. And it shows a positive difference down the road. So yeah, that's the shift we're making.
Yeah. Let me ask you about two kind of things that I've seen. Really would love to get your take on this. So in, one of the I'll call it spammy. It's pretty spammy. One of the kind of spammy link building tactics that I've seen a lot is like the ABC link exchange, right? Where it's I link to you, you link to me. But the kind of iteration on it that I've seen is, hey, I'm going to write a comparison post or a best post. I'm going to write, the best email outreach platforms. I'm going to include you, but only if you link back to me and something else. Right. So that has become a thing. And so that's why you just see so many of these best whatever sites, these roundup posts, whatever. And to me, obviously that gets you a lot of branded anchors, right? Like if you get mentioned in a ton of those, but where do you think Google looks at any of these types of tactics and draws a line where it's because, branded anchors, that could be manipulated just as easily. So are there areas, specific types of sites that you want to get these branded anchors on versus other specific types of posts that you shouldn't be getting them on?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you don't do that tactic. It doesn't work, but I think kind of does. And
seems like it does it now.
and especially there's a problem if you're a lot of people talking on social media, how bad AI answers are when they encounter a lot of those top 10 lists, because Google's AI answers seem to be much more subject to manipulation with a lot of these spammy top 10 lists, product lists. I think Google will figure it out eventually, but for now, it seems to be a tactic that's working. That's the conflict. I think to a big extent, a lot of those spammy tactics still work when done well, but overdone, it may not have a lot of long-term success. It's really hard to say. To your question about where to get these links, that, I think we've seen an increase in the last 2 or 3 years on topical focus, that broad digital campaigns where you're getting the links from sites that are not necessarily in your area of focus. I think we're seeing a lot of those campaigns not be as effective as they used to be. So really narrowing in on topical authority is more key today than it has been in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, we have these conversations a lot internally and on this podcast a couple of times where it is tough when you get into something like a news site, right? Like news sites, they have maybe categorical authority, they say they have a travel column or travel section, and maybe they've built up some authority there. So if you're a travel site, you want to get a link there. But, there are these kind of general websites general news sites that kind of cover everything. They don't really have great authority, but they have great domain authority, right? Like they are still well known. Are those less valuable because they don't have the topical authority, but they're getting your brand in front of people who it might not be topically relevant, right? So I always have that struggle explaining that to people. You're solving for Google or you're solving for users, just getting your brand out to anybody and everyone who will listen.
Yeah, I think those mentions are valuable. I don't want to walk away from, any press mention ever. I think where we're seeing sites stumble is, let's say they sell, an affiliate site that does reviews dehumidifiers. And, then they create some content, some linkable assets that's, on something marginally related to moisture in the air, like skin hydration.
Air quality.
Something that's not quite has anything to do with dehumidifiers, but is tangibly related. And then you do they make a linkable asset, they get great coverage, but it's not quite in that topical focus. And we're seeing those sites not do as well as they would have traditionally. So we really want to focus when we're creating campaigns, we really want to bring it closer to the core product. And then I think we start to see success. And then the placements don't matter as much as long as it's really about the company and your core offering and your brand story. Those work so much better than just creating that standalone content piece. Hey, we're going to get some keyword rich anchors over here. Now bring it closer to your business. And that's tough to do. But when you do that, you're creating this business moat that's easy to defend.
Yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like SEOs need to start thinking more like traditional PRs in this regard, where it's, how can I position the brand? How can I do something and promote, an event or whatever that this brand is spearheading, rather than here's this study we did that is somewhat related.
Yeah, don't do a study about a topic. Do a study about your own product or something you tore apart, or look at this neat thing we did with this bed mattress. We tried to see if bed bugs would live in this. Bring it closer to your product.
Yeah. I like somebody said this, like, how can you create content that your highlight a problem that your product will solve? Mm-hmm. So maybe it is a bed bug resistant mattress or something. And like you test a bunch of other mattresses to see how it holds up. There's a piece.
Yeah. But Google says, don't create, this is where we get into, I hate to parrot what Google says, because for a long time we're like, Google's lying to us, everything. No, they said they don't want you to create content just for SEO. They want you to create content for an existing audience or an intended audience. And that means someone who's going to be a good customer to you, someone who is already coming to your site and would value from the content that you're creating, not this standalone piece over here that was a, link bait piece that just exists so you can get some keywords. That's exactly what they don't want. And they've been reasonably successful at devaluing sites that do that.
Yeah. Okay. I want to switch gears to, you spent a lot of time as a quality rater for Google, and talked a lot about EAT. Before this call, you and I talked a bit about EAT. I'd love to understand, this idea of, let's start with like reputation, a brand reputation, and how you used to kind of do reputation checks as part of this EAT. I feel like EAT gets a bad rap, but some people think it's just whatever. It's just putting author bios in there, but it's not really that. So let's talk about EAT.
Absolutely. So I also get a little distressed when people dismiss EAT, like EAT's not a thing. When I worked as a quality rater, and I got to be careful about how much I can talk about because I signed all these non-disclosures.
Of course.
But I think it's safe to say that one of our jobs was to score EAT on every single page that we looked at. I mean, there's a score and you have to do research into those things. Now, I think some of the confusion comes when people think, how are those applied? Because it's not a direct ranking factor. What happens is Google takes all those scores and they collate them and combine them and slice them up in different ways. Then they can adjust their rankings so that the search results that you see are aligned with those EAT scores. They also use those EAT scores in their machine learning model. So they take the good pages that, quality rater rates and the bad pages, they feed them into machine learning. And then you have an algorithm that can tell like, oh, this site is demonstrating expertise. It's demonstrating effort. It's demonstrating originality, things that we don't think machines can evaluate. But when you have thousands of examples, fed into machine learning examples, the machine learning gets pretty good at it. So I also think there's some confusion about what quality raters are actually looking at. They might be looking at author boxes, but the first thing they look at is what they do, a reputation check. They see what other sites are saying about your site. And there's very simple ways that you can do this online, but do other sites recognize you as an expert? Do I recognize the brand? Have I heard of this site that I'm checking? If I've heard of it as a quality rater, it's probably going to get a pretty high score. If it's a government site, it's probably going to get a pretty high EAT score. We're looking at the navigation. Do you talk about 10 different topics? Finance, lifestyle, we've all seen these sites that sell links that cover, every technology. Or are you talking about one very specific thing? Do you have pages and pages of your qualifications and, all that? At the end of the day, I always told people as a quality rater, would I send my parents to this site for shopping? No, my parents who are terrible at the internet are likely to lose their money if they make a mistake. Would I trust to send my parents to this site? And it's all about trust. And we see that's kind of what Google wants to do. So when we talk about EAT, we want to incorporate all these signals. And I need to write a guide on how to actually incorporate EAT onto your web pages. It's not author boxes, but that's where you start. Sorry, I forgot what the question was. I went off on a rant.
No. Let's talk a little bit of like off-page reputation. I don't want to get too far into like reputation management, but obviously there's crossover with PR and digital PR and press mentions and all that good stuff. How far off, aside from like reviews and maybe social profiles, that sort of thing, are you looking for, as a quality rater, let's say, are you looking for mentions in the press, like that sort of thing?
Yeah. So here's what I encourage everybody watching or listening to this podcast do. Google your site. And when you see the results, there's 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner next to your site. Hit those. A window opens up with information about that URL, and then click on more results about this site. When you do that, you can kind of get some background. Google will surface some background information, what they know about your site, reviews, reputation, things like that. If it's a small site, you don't have a lot of popularity, you may not see much there. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Larger sites, you're going to start to see information, and you're going to see, reviews from Glassdoor or Yelp or things like that. What you see about your own site, you're going to start to see reputation information. That will give you a quick gut check of how Google views your site. And if the information is there, if it's highly reputable, you'll see a lot of good information, and you can quickly kind of guess, is the site viewed as an expert in their area, or is there just not enough information? And interestingly, Google will also list on that page what you say about yourself. So it's some of what you say about yourself is definitely important. That's why I, encourage everybody to have rich about pages, clearly defining what you do, who you are, rich author profile pages, demonstrating your expertise. And I always tell my clients, show your work, talk about your methodology, talk about how you arrived at your expertise, your years of experience, plaster that stuff all over the web, start to build that graph. So that's how we think about external reputation.
Do you think negative reputation is something that can hurt rankings?
Oh, absolutely. We started seeing this around 2018, with a lifetime ago, with the medic update, or I can't remember the other names for it, but where, certain people in the medical profession, like Dr. McCullough, negative reputation, huge articles in the New York Times about how he was a quack. McCullough didn't do anything technically wrong, but his reputation took a huge hit. And a lot of Dr. Axe was another one, with lower sites. So I think that negative information, fortunately, I don't see it as a huge SEO tactic, but I think just publishing articles about how someone is terrible, especially if it's your money or your life query dealing with anything money related or health related, Google sees that. And I think it's negative EAT is really a thing. And fortunately, I don't see a lot of people employing that as a negative tactic, because I think it works, and I think it can do a lot of damage to people. But yeah, negative information, you want to clean that up. And it can be bad.
Yeah. I mean, I think one way people potentially combat this and look at a link building strategy sometimes is just kind of blanket the web with this expert commentary. That is like a digital PR strategy, using tools like Harrow or Source of Sources, or whatever quoted. They will pitch their site as an expert in whatever. And I'm curious kind of what your take is on the role that type of tactic has in EAT. Is that helpful at all?
I think so. Like, one thing I tell the companies I work in is go on podcasts like this. Pay very close attention to the show notes and what, what the host says about the company, like you did in the opening of this podcast. Cyrus runs Zyppy. Zyppy does this, this, and this. I'm not going to double check the show notes. It doesn't really matter to me. But if you're actually doing that as a strategy, you can ask for that very specific, give the intro to the podcast host or the media outlet if it's, if it's an interview, and control the narrative about what they're saying about your company and your entity. And you can start to shape that narrative and control it a little. That's especially important in the age of AI too, helping control that narrative.
Yeah. Talk to me about that a little bit too. That's maybe the last thing I want to hit, because there's a lot of talk about kind of entities in AI. And I feel like that, and this might be showing my ignorance to the topic, but like what is said about your site is kind of part of like the entity that Google kind of knows. But let's demystify that for me.
Yeah. So I want to start by saying I am not an AI expert, and it's all new and very confusing. So Google, has their knowledge graph and, entity graph, if you will, where they sort of know little facts about everything on the internet. And the bigger entity you are, the more facts associated with you. You can look into Wikidata and, see a lot of these things. LLMs work differently, where they don't have a concept of entities. It's just word association. But there's some overlap between the two. And then there's even more overlap because ChatGPT and Google AI answers are grounding their results in traditional search, which relies on entities. So it all gets kind of mixed up. But there definitely is, what we're seeing currently in AI answers is it's more word association than entity based, but it's all in the soup at this point. So still want to optimize for, I think the work of getting yourself out there is the same for both generally. 80%, as long as you're getting your name out there, you're getting it cited, in authoritative places, that's going to help in both AI answers and traditional search results. And that's what we're looking for. So just keep doing the work that we're doing.
That's what it sounds like. I was going to say, and maybe to add on to that, the idea of when you are getting mentions, try to control the kind of keywords or around it. And in PR terms, it's that boilerplate that you put at the end of a press release, or, always trying to nudge the journalist or whoever's writing about you to include, like you said, Cyrus, like include specific terms. Zyppy is an SEO, agency, or, email outreach tool. BuzzStream says this about XYZ. And I think that's where a lot of PR teams and kind of SEO teams butt heads when they should be working together. Because
exactly. We're, as link builders, I think we've been so traditionally focused on anchor text, and the words around that anchor text are, I think, equally or more important now in the age of AI. So that anchor text is great, but I want to know all the other words in the article and what are they saying about me and my brand. And I think that's equally or more important than the anchor text today.
Well, let me get one more here then. Do you think that unlinked mentions are undervalued at this point?
Yeah, I do, especially with AI. AI doesn't care if there's a link there. And Google's entity graph doesn't really, they care if there's a link. So I'm not boohooing links. I want those links. Links work great. Anchor text works great, but I'm really more interested in, I'll take an unlinked mention, especially from an authoritative source, because it is going to help down the line.
Yeah. I feel like the overall sense I'm getting from you, Cyrus, to kind of answer our question I think we started with, is this idea of, is traditional SEO dead? It sounds like it is not. It sounds like it is very much alive, but there are kind of maybe different focuses, or maybe we all just have to take a step back to kind of our roots as marketers and do the things that build the brand. But I'd love to hear your thought on kind of just where you think SEO is going at this point.
That's a great question. I don't have a crystal ball, but that if you follow SEO on social media, you might get the impression that clicks are dead. Zero click marketing is, the future. Traditional SEO is we have to AI optimize everything. I have e-commerce clients that haven't even noticed what's going on the search. Their traffic is, going fine, nothing. But I need to recognize the difficulties that other sites with lots of informational content are seeing a divergence of clicks and impressions. Impressions are going up, clicks are going down. So it's a mix. For a lot of sites, traditional SEO, I think we've got, a couple good years left where a lot of sites we have to keep doing those things. And for the most part, 99% of my SEO work has not changed significantly from last year in the age of AI. We're still producing content. We're still getting links. We're still doing technical SEO. That hasn't changed. And I think that lifestyle has a lot more life in it than I think a lot of people realize.
I love it. Well, thank you, Cyrus, so much. This has been awesome. People can find you on LinkedIn, your website, Zyppy.com. I forgot to mention this in the beginning, but if people have questions about this kind of stuff, please comment, reach out. I'm sure Cyrus would be more than happy to answer anything about all this stuff.
Thanks for having me, and let's go build some links.
All right. You heard it here, folks. Building links. SEO is not dead. Let's do it. Thanks for watching.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.